In this session today, I'm going to be talking to you about the Department of Labor Open Data Portal and API. My name is Chris Morris, and I'm with the Office of Data Governance. I'm very excited to talk to you about our new open data services. So first thing, I wanted to reiterate our commitment to the public that we recognize that our data are a strategic asset, and we're committed to making them available in machine-readable formats and easily findable, accessible, and usable. The Open Data Portal and API is a big part of our open data plan, and we're going to be doing a lot more in the area of open data. So I encourage you and invite you to read our open data plan to learn more about our efforts. I also just wanted to thank our public stakeholders. We did an outreach, a request for information in 2022 to better understand the needs of workers and other DOL stakeholders who consume our data. And we really learned a lot and got a lot of valuable feedback. Some of the comments that we received focused on the need to provide timely and accurate data, provide access to additional data sources that would benefit public policy, program analysis, and evidence-based decision-making, and suggestions for providing more optimal modes of data access. So we heard that feedback and we prioritized it in our functional requirements for this new service. And I think that you all are going to be very happy with what you see here. We were also able to take data set suggestions. Specifically, there was a need to access the Employment and Training Administration data with the API. Some of those data sets are very large, and so the API is really a great way to serve that data out. So we were able to get a lot of those data sets in. On this slide, I'm showing you a screenshot of the Open Data Portal landing page. This is a centralized page for DOL data. So when you land here, some of the key features, we have a data catalog for browsing data across agencies. And we put a standard so that for each data set that goes out to the public, it's going to have associated with it comprehensive metadata that describe the variables in our data sets. And we think that this is really going to help people to work more efficiently when they have a consistent way to understand the contents of the data set to see if it's suitable for their intended purposes for using the data, even prior to accessing it. Also, the key feature on here is our API web service that serves customizable data extracts in machine-readable formats. So as a user, you'll be able to access metadata and data in machine-readable format of your choice on demand exactly how you like it. And then we have a number of resources, including a user guide, API examples, video tutorials, code templates, and of course, a frequently asked questions page. So in order to start accessing DOL metadata and data, the first step is to register. So at this time, I'm going to ask our team to drop a link to registration in. I encourage you all to register. It's a very easy process. You can do it at dataportal.dol.gov/registration. We are authenticating with login.gov. So if you don't already have an account, it's very easy. Just create a login.gov account. It's going to ask for an email address, a password. You'll confirm your email address. You'll set up two-factor authentication for the security of your account. And then you'll fill out a brief API registration form that we have. And if you already have an account, just simply sign in through the portal and then fill out the form. If you are a federal government employee, there's simplified access with your PIF card, which is a really nice perk. So once you complete that registration process, you're going to land on the API Key Manager page. If you don't see your key right away, you may need to give it a couple minutes or refresh your screen while the system is incorporating your credentials. Once you are signed in, you're going to see a place at the top of the screen where you can access your API key at any time. It's right above the top navigation bar. So if you ever wonder, hey, where's my API key? You know that you can sign in and find it easily right there at the top. Your API key will look like a mixture of numbers, letters, and special characters. So this is unique for you for your access to metadata and data. So don't share it with others. It's just for your use of the API. And then within this key manager, you can create up to 5 additional keys if you need them to use them for different purposes, client applications, or automation. So once you're registered, you have your API key and you're signed in, now it's time to look for data. So up here on the top navigation bar, there's an easy place to find the data catalog. So within the data catalog, you can look at all the data sets we have across DOL. And there's a couple of ways to refine the results that are shown here. So we have a filtering capability here on the left sidebar. You can either filter by category. So we have broad categories like workforce, enforcement, things of that nature. We have additional descriptors in the tags. So if you're looking for particular concepts like accident or injury, you can filter the data that way. Or if you're just looking for data by agency, you can use the agency filter, and that will filter the results down. In addition, you'll be able to sort your results by dataset name in ascending or descending order. And once you have your filtered results, simply read through the dataset descriptions and get a sense of if the data are going to be helpful for your research needs. And then once you click on a link to one of these datasets, it's going to take you to an individual dataset page. Now, we've structured the layout of these pages to be consistent across the board, and that was really to help with the user experience. We want it to be predictable and consistent, right? Findability and accessibility is a key thing that we have been working to improve through this centralized portal. So each of these pages, in addition to data set information, you're going to have field information. So you'll know what the field names are, the descriptions, the data types, and we're going to have comprehensive metadata. So there'll be an expanded set of metadata elements to describe the variables in each data set. Under that, we have a 10 record dataset preview, so you get an idea of what the data look like. And then we have our API Query Builder, which is a simple interface for building API requests. And below that, we have code snippets for every dataset, and that's going to be for people that are seeking to interact with the API programmatically. So shown here on this page is an example of what one of these dataset pages look like. And this is for the employment insurance weekly claims data. So I want to draw your attention here at the top. At the top of each page, we have bookmarks, which make for easy navigation through an individual dataset page. So you can click and go directly to the area that's of most interest to you. So let's talk about the different elements that you'll find on one of these pages. So at the very top is going to be your dataset information. You'll have your dataset description, the publishing agency, how frequently the data are refreshed, how many fields are in the dataset, what tags are associated with the dataset, and very importantly, how to contact us about the dataset. So there's a link for contact us there. Directly below the dataset information will be the field information. So this is where you'll get your field names, your field descriptions, and the data types in terms of how you should be working with them in your software. Right underneath of the fields table is the comprehensive expanded metadata. So if you're signed into the service, there's going to be a link that you can click on to access the metadata. So simply click on that link and your web browser will ask our API service to retrieve your metadata. What I love about APIs is, unlike a traditional link that you might click on a website to download a metadata or a data file, is that the API sits on top of a database. So you're ultimately going to get the latest available information, and so it is linked to a dynamic source. And the way that the API works is similar to, you think about a waiter in a restaurant. So you sit down at the table and you want to place an order. In this case, we're ordering data, right? We're ordering data on demand. So the server says, what metadata can I get for you, and how would you like it formatted? And so because the API is a web service, we're going to create a web link in order to make our request. So I want to talk a little bit about the structure of this metadata API request. The portal will automatically put this together, so you don't have to worry about building any kind of web link. But This is kind of a tease for the workshops that we're going to be doing, where we'll be talking more in depth about how the API is structured and how it works. But included in this link, the first part tells you the location of where the data services are, which is api.prod.dol.gov/v4. The method is get, because we're going to be getting information. The next part is agency, which is ETA. And then the endpoint is the dataset name. So UI National Weekly Claims, because in this example, we would be getting metadata for that particular dataset. Then you get to pick what format you want, right? By default, we have CSV here, so that for those of you that want to open up the metadata file like in an Excel spreadsheet, it's very easy to do that. CSV stands for Comma Separated Values. It's a non-proprietary universal data format, and it can be opened using common text editors like Notepad. But as I said, if you prefer to see this in like a tabular spreadsheet, it's really easy to display that in software like Microsoft Excel. The last part of the request will include your API key. So that's why you need to register for that. And then if you see right here within that URL, it includes, that we're asking for metadata. So again, we'll talk about this more at the upcoming workshops, but what is really great about using APIs is that you have a consistent and predictable way for accessing metadata and data. It'd be very easy to swap out a different endpoint name. Like, let's say you wanted to get metadata for the state weekly claims. You could just change out national weekly claims with state weekly claims, and the API service will very easily pull that metadata for you. So I want to take a minute to talk about the value of our metadata. Our metadata can really help you to understand the data set. It describes it really well, so you can see if it meets your needs prior to access. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, but there are a lot more use cases even beyond this. So for example, let's say you're coming to look at a particular data set and you want to know what categories of data are available and how are they defined. A lot of times you come to a data set, you're looking for data for a particular industry or a state or occupation, and you want to know, is that concept even in the data set? And then if it's in the data set, how is it defined? If we're looking at industries, are we talking about NAICS codes? Are we talking about standard industrial classification codes? If you're working with state data, are they state postal codes? Are they state names? What occupational code book is being used, et cetera, et cetera. You want to know how it's defined so that then when you're going to access the data, you know what you can specifically query on. The other thing metadata is really helpful for is for, let's say you're trying to do some kind of geospatial analysis. What fields in the data set are location related, right? And what is the granularity of location data that's available? How is it defined? Things of that nature. Or if you're looking, let's say, at inspections and you want to know what are the valid ranges of inspections that I can make an API query for. And so you might want to see that you can query from dates from 1970 to present. So that's the kind of info you'll get in the metadata. One last example would be what variables in a data set are measures. So what are we measuring? Total wages, total number of employees, number of violations, number of inspections. So again, with metadata, you can quickly assess the data set for many things. So when you download the data on that individual dataset page, you may need a little help understanding what each of those metadata elements mean. So on the portal, up at the top navigation bar, we actually have a section for metadata. And this will help you understand the metadata schema we're using, how each element is defined, and then there's some practical examples in there to help you to understand. At this time, we have a significant number of metadata elements, but they're all centered around the substantive values of a data set or values that have meaning. So that's going to be super helpful for your use now, but I wanted to let you all know that we are working on some additional metadata elements that I think are going to be very helpful for your analysis. So one, we're going to include metadata elements on missing values so that for each variable in a data set, as a user, you can understand how missing is defined. So how should you expect missing to be defined? And then what are the patterns of missingness in a data set? In addition, we plan to include metadata elements for valueless entries. We refer to that as values in a data set that appear valid, but they don't actually meet any defined standard. So an example of that would be if we had a data set that said that it's NAICS industry codes, and there's a number in the data set that looks like an industry code, but it doesn't actually meet the defined standard. We're going to have metadata that will alert the users to potential data quality problems so that if there's a particular industry that doesn't meet the defined standard, that will make you aware of that. And lastly, we're going to include elements for descriptive statistics so that you can get an understanding of the distribution of various variables before you access the data. So lots of really helpful information here that comprehensively describes the data sets. Okay, so underneath of metadata, we are going to have a data preview, or we have one. It's a 10 record preview that'll help you to better understand the structure, organization, and format of the selected data set. So this will just give you another idea of what the data look like before you start making your queries. The way I like to think about it is like you get to try before you buy. So before you start downloading the data. Okay, so underneath the data preview, we have our API Query Builder. So here's where it gets fun because you get to build your own customized data request. And basically, the API Query Builder gives you a template for making API requests. You'll get to select which fields and records you want. You'll get to choose how records are formatted and sorted. And then this tool will generate an API request that you can use to get your desired data. So here it comes back our waiter. The API says, hey, what fields and records do you want? How should I format and sort your data? So he's waiting for an order. And what this API Query Builder is like an order form. It's your menu. You get to go through the options. You get to select exactly what it is that you want. And then it'll build the web request. And then you can send that and get the latest data from the database. So after you build your API request with the Query Builder and you hit the execute button, you're going to have a couple different options for accessing your data. You can either use the download button down here to download the data directly to your desktop, or you can get this API request URL, which is just a web link that you can put in your web browser. You can put it in the software of your choice. So if you prefer to work in Excel, Excel can make a connection to the API to get data. If you like to use open source software, you can do it with Python and R. There's lots of options, lots of flexibility. And I won't really go through the details, and I know it's kind of small here, but the web request for data is similarly structured to that of metadata, where you have like your agency, the data set name, the format, and then all those additional customizations is what we call parameters in terms of how you want, which fields you want, how you want the data filtered, etc. The tool builds it all for you, so you don't have to worry about the structure, but again, just making you aware of that. If you prefer to work within like a command line interface, the curl command, may be advantageous in some situations. So then directly below that, we have our code snippets. So every individual dataset page will have a code snippet that will make it really easy for users that want programmatic access to get the metadata for a particular data set, or this is set up just to give you a 10 record sample of a data set. And of course, there's lots more that you can do to customize. This is just to help people to get up and running. So we currently have that available in R, Python, and JavaScript. You'll notice here that you will need to populate your API key. So once you copy and paste these code templates into the appropriate software, get your API key above the top nav bar, and you should be good to go. So I want to highlight and summarize just a couple of the benefits of using our API that we talked about. Some of the pros: just get the records that you need. Instead of, some data sets can be very large, millions of records. Instead of waiting a couple minutes to download a big file and then within Excel sorting and filtering out a subset of records you need, just use the API. You can build all of that processing into the request, and then you have that link that you can reuse. Another pro: integrate data with your preferred software. We already kind of talked about that. And having that web link, it's software agnostic. API doesn't care what software is making the request. It just understands, hey, I want you to go get this, and then it will return it for you. Our API allows you to automate your workflows, so you can build a request once and use it anytime. I know that some folks go and download a file on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, quarterly. With the API, let's say you were getting something that gets updated pretty frequently, build your request one time, and then you can just put it into your browser the next week, next month. You could connect it to Excel and have a live feed where you keep the latest data up to date. So this really supports automation with machine readable data, which I think is a really huge asset to people. And again, the latest available data is guaranteed when using our API service. And as I had mentioned, the API is especially good with big data sets. So if you had a specific question like how many OSHA inspections were open in the manufacturing industry in Cleveland, Ohio from 2010 to present, you could build that custom query, and then the API will go and get your data and return that back to you. So we covered a lot, and I just want you to know, once you go back to register, where you can find resources to help you. So under the resources menu bar, you will see we have a getting started page. That'll just remind you at a 30,000-foot level the steps for getting your account to start accessing data. The API user guide is our comprehensive guide for using the API. It'll go through everything we talked about in much more detail, including data set filtering and how that works. We also have an API examples page, which gives you some more detailed code examples. If you're a programmer, you'll know what I mean by this. We have parameterized code templates with the full set of customization that you can pick up and use to do some more advanced queries. In addition, we have an Excel toolkit there for non-programmers, to help them with Excel integration. We also have video tutorials. So we have short and simple instructional videos for the API. At this time, we'll drop a link to the YouTube playlist in the chat. We're just getting started, but those are a couple of videos that can help you, and we'll be adding more videos in the future. We do have a video tutorials page. We're going to be getting the YouTube videos integrated into here within the next probably 2 weeks. So this should be populated soon. And then, of course, we have those frequently asked questions. And of course, we are always looking for feedback and suggestions. We're here to answer your questions. So there's additional support beyond the self-help resources using the Contact Us. You can find that at the top above the top nav bar. And we will be more than happy to, to help out with anything that you need. And if you have suggestions, even things like suggested data sets, I just want you to know we really value feedback that we get from our users, and we'll prioritize data sets. If we don't know what data sets you need in the API, then it's going to be harder to prioritize that. So we want to hear from you, whether it's that, if you want to, just give feedback on the services in general. We would appreciate that because we're always looking to improve. I also wanted to mention that we have a visualization gallery where you can interactively explore our data. So we're just starting to build this, but there's a couple in there to explore right now.